My name is Shobita. After my father's death, our circumstances changed drastically. Money started pouring in for us. Although my mother was helpless, whenever I cleaned her bed, I found heaps of money under it. She used to say that those who have no one have the Almighty. It was a miracle from above. One day, when our neighbor auntie took mother to the hospital for a checkup, I slept on the bed which was empty in her absence. Just a little while had passed when I felt the ground beneath me vanish, because that place where my father died felt like the walls of time had collapsed. In a moment, everything shattered. His face, voice, footsteps, everything disappeared instantly. After he left, only silence remained in the house, and mother seemed like a stone. Her health worsened. She lay in one place day and night, with no tears in her eyes and no complaints on her lips. It felt as if her heart had stopped beating. Recently, some relatives came to our house, mourned my father's death, took care of our food and drink, and after some time they all left for their homes. Only mother and I remained alone at home, in the room where everything felt meaningless without father's presence. Auntie's sudden arrival at our house, without informing us, was unexpected. She came with her son Kailash, who used to visit with father occasionally, but now it seemed different. He didn't come into my room or even meet my eyes, only quietly moved around the kitchen, courtyard or mother's room. Auntie sat by mother, stroked her hands, braided her hair, and repeatedly said not to worry, that God would fix everything, and that mother was not alone, they were with her. I sat quietly in the corner, listening and watching mother's face, whose eyes always seemed to be searching for something lost in time. When she looked at me, she would slightly nod but say nothing. One day I held her hands and said, "Mother, please don't leave me." She held my fingers tightly as if promising she wouldn't go anywhere. Auntie touched my hands and said I was very brave and that now I had to take care of my mother in place of father. I nodded silently, though inside there was a storm. Nights became even more silent, with the ceiling fan's noise, father's picture on the wall, and mother's silence becoming a heavy burden. One night, when I opened my eyes, Kailash was quietly standing in the courtyard looking at the sky. I watched him from behind the door. He spoke nothing, lost in deep thought. Suddenly he turned and looked at me. I quickly stepped back, heart pounding. Next morning, he remained silent at the breakfast table. Seeing this, Auntie said that Kailash would take time to adjust to the atmosphere here, but that we were with our people now. He said nothing, just nodded. Days passed, and mother started speaking a little, though her voice had grown weak. She kept repeating one phrase, "Don't open the envelope." I was puzzled about which envelope she meant, as I hadn't found anything special under her bed. Yet her eyes kept moving there as if something was hidden. The next day, when I returned from school, something felt different as soon as I opened the door. Mother was awake, and I saw something under her pillow. I quickly removed the cloth and found a folded, clear piece of paper. When I looked at mother, she avoided my gaze. I quietly asked what it was, and she whispered not to ask. I said I had grown up, but she replied I had only learned to cope, not grown up, and gave a faint smile that vanished instantly. Auntie came in the afternoon carrying some papers, with Kailash silently following her. I quickly put the paper back under the pillow. Mother squeezed my hand, signaling me to be silent. That night, when everyone was asleep, I tried to retrieve the paper from under the pillow, but mother was awake and gently placed her hand on mine, shaking her head, "No." Then she turned away. I stayed awake all night, unable to find peace with the fan's noise, father's picture, and mother's silence. The next morning, Kailash was watering the courtyard. I asked how long he would stay, and he replied, "As long as needed. Do you have any objection to me staying here?" I said nothing and returned to my room. Auntie woke early every morning, kneaded dough, made tea, and washed mother's hands with warm water. Every action seemed a duty she had come to fulfill. I silently followed her, noting the absence of fatigue on her face, only constant busyness. One day, she told me that the yogurt was finished and asked if I could get some from the market. I agreed. One afternoon, while mother was sleeping, I changed the bedsheet. At the corner of the bed, My hand touched something heavy, an old envelope full of money. I was stunned. Mother woke up startled, and when I asked where the money came from, she said not to ask and folded her hands, pleading me to leave it alone. I put the envelope back, but my mind was restless, wondering who put the money there, when and why. Did Auntie know? Did Kailash? I decided to stay quiet, but the secret troubled me. 2 days later, while washing dishes, Kailash entered and ignored me, fetching water from the fridge. I asked why he was always silent. He said it was useless to speak. Then he left. That night, after everyone slept, I quietly entered Mother's room and asked if anyone came at night. She turned away without answering. I asked why she never told me anything, saying I was her daughter and nothing should be hidden from me. She placed her hand on my head and said all secrets would be revealed in time. I just had to be patient. Next morning, Auntie was giving Mother medicine. I asked her if she knew where the envelopes came from. She paused, then said sometimes it's better not to ask questions. Those are money from above and we should accept it. I remained silent. That night I decided to stay awake all night. I lay down on a sheet on the floor near Mother's room. The night passed slowly, with no sound except faint noises from the ceiling, like someone quietly moving around. When morning came, I woke up rubbing my tired eyes and saw Kailash sitting in the courtyard smoking a cigarette. I went to him and asked, "Where were you last night?" He looked at me startled and said, "Why do you care?" His words were sharp, as if he took every question personally. 2 days later, Mother had a mild fever, and Buaji took special care of her, staying with her all day. In the evening, while I was cleaning, I found another envelope under Mother's bed. I quickly picked it up and hid it behind the wardrobe. Mother saw me and tried to say something, but her lips trembled. Looking at her, I said, "No, Mother, I won't stay silent now." I had opened that envelope at night and saw money inside, 500 rupees notes and a slip saying, "This is all possible for now." Whose letter was this? Who was giving the money, and what did "for now" mean? I wanted to ask Buaji everything but controlled myself. The next day, when Kailash came out of Mother's room, he had something in his hand and quickly went to the corner of the courtyard, dug a hole and buried something. I saw everything clearly. When he came inside, I went to that corner and dug up the ground. There was a plastic bag with another envelope inside, but it was empty. It was now clear that someone came to leave money, and Kailash was definitely hiding something. Mother's silence, Buaji's caution, and Kailash's behavior all pointed to a secret. At night, I asked Mother for the last time if I was in trouble. She said, "No, daughter, you are not in trouble," placed her hand on my forehead and said, "Stay safe and endure everything as I have." There was a battle in her eyes that words couldn't express. But I, a little girl, had unknowingly stepped into this battlefield. That night I went to bed early, but sleep was far away. The old wooden chair outside Mother's room creaked softly as if bearing a weight. The fan was on, but the atmosphere was heavy and stifling. I silently watched the door, my heart sensing an unseen danger. Suddenly there was a sound, soft footsteps. I quickly pulled the sheet over my face but did not close my eyes. I was scared. Then I got up quietly and peeked from behind the window curtains. A shadow was slowly moving toward Mother's room. It was a tall, simple figure that stopped in front of the door, bent down as if placing something, then left silently. I was stunned, heart pounding. I looked at Mother. She was awake but showed no reaction, just a strange calm as if she recognized the shadow. No fear, no surprise, just silent acceptance. The next morning I found a small empty envelope near the door. Mother lowered her head when I looked at her. I was about to speak when Buaji came and asked what I was searching for. I said I was just cleaning Mother's room. She told me to leave it alone and let Mother handle her things. There was softness in Buaji's eyes but a hidden boundary in her words. After that day I spent many nights awake, hearing footsteps every night. Someone coming, leaving something and going away. Mother stayed awake as if waiting for someone. I never saw the visitor clearly, just a shadow that moved silently, leaving a faint sound. One day I decided to ask Buaji if someone came at night. She said firmly, "Daughter, not everything should be questioned. You ask too many questions. Leave some things for time." But her words scared me. She gently stroked my head and said, "God is there. Nothing will happen to you." That day, Kailash came home late. When I opened the door, he entered without a word. I called after him, asking if he knew about the shadow that came at night. He didn't turn back, just said, "Don't chase shadows or you will become one." His words pierced my heart like an arrow. I thought maybe he knew something or was the one, or at least one of those who knew. That night, I set the bed in the courtyard and prepared to watch secretly. The air was still, as if even the trees were silent. The clock hands moved forward and I waited. Finally, the shadow appeared. I crouched behind the wall, and the shadow went to Mother's room, stopped, placed something, then turned. I bravely threw a small stone. The shadow startled, stopped, then ran out of the gate quickly. I ran to open Mother's door. She was sitting on the bed with closed eyes and hands folded, as if praying. I asked, "Mother, who is that?" She opened her eyes, took a deep breath and said, "Don't ask, daughter, just be patient. He only comes to give, not to take." I was silent because every time I got the same answer. The next day, I opened the envelope near the door. This time, it had no money but a photo of my mother with a stranger man. He was unknown to me, but Mother was smiling clearly. I went to Mother and asked, "Who is this?" When she saw the photo, tears came to her eyes for a moment. Then she said, "He is an old friend who is keeping his promise." For the first time, I heard Mother speak with a trembling voice filled with pain and gratitude. I always felt Kailash's presence at home like a burden. He was around me daily but spoke only out of formality. When he looked at me, his eyes held a crushed pain, as if my presence was a disturbance. One day, while giving Mother her medicine, Kailash entered the room. His gaze was fixed on Mother, but I heard him say, "Mother, is this house ours or theirs?" Buaji, who always spoke lovingly, fell silent at this. Then she softly said, "Kailash, this is our family too. This is our lineage. You be quiet. Do you know your maternal uncle had made a will?" Kailash clenched his teeth and left the room without saying a word. Hearing this, a cold wave ran through my heart. I looked at Mother. She was staring at the ceiling. Her eyes were extinguished, as if some answer had been hidden there for years. After that day, I felt Kailash's silence had turned into poison inside him. He had gone beyond ignoring me. It was as if my very existence was intolerable to him. Once, when I was watering the plants, he came near and asked why I was doing all that. I looked at him, startled. He said nothing would change. I replied that everything would change if time changed. He said time wasn't in my hands, Shobita. The envelopes began arriving punctually every week. Each week, I secretly took them out and counted the money. The same question echoed in my mind. Who was this and why? When, how, and what was the meaning of all this money? And every time Mother gave me the same answer. Let what is happening happen. Don't ask questions. Then one day, with an envelope came a paper with only 2 words written on it. Promise kept. That night, Mother seemed very weak, her breath labored. I placed my hand on her forehead. She was sweating but had no fever. Tears streamed from her eyes. I asked what had happened. She nodded as if wanting to say something, but her tongue wouldn't cooperate. Only tears flowed, as if years of burden were slowly shedding. I gave her a glass of water. She drank 2 sips, then fixed her gaze on the ceiling. The next morning, Kailash appeared very changed. No greetings, no inquiries, left without breakfast. Buaji said he seemed troubled, looking for work in the city, maybe worried. I said he should find some manners along with work, not lose those too. Buaji said nothing, but I saw a tiredness in her eyes, as if she knew everything but was used to silence. That day, Mother's health worsened. She lay mostly in bed, barely able to speak, trying to communicate with hand gestures and finger signs as if painting old memories in the air. I watched her eyes closely but understood nothing. Buaji stayed busy caring for her, preparing porridge in the morning, warm milk at noon, sitting with her for prayers in the evening. Her demeanor was so dignified that everything seemed ordinary from outside, but questions multiplied in my heart every day. Kailash was rarely home now, sometimes saying he was leaving for work, sometimes silently slipping out, returning with envelopes he quickly hid. I noticed new things in his cupboard: expensive drinks, chocolates, new cigarette packs, everything indicating he was connected to another world. One day, while changing Mother's bedsheet, I felt a heavy envelope under the bed. It had more money than before, about 80,000 Indian rupees, and no note or slip, just a simple paper with one word: last. My heart raced, sensing a new turn. I rushed to Buaji with the envelope, asking whose it was. She sighed deeply, as if already knowing, and softly said it must be from a good person. Don't ask questions, she warned. I asked if she was part of the truth and if she could at least tell me when this would end. She placed her hand on my head, closed her eyes, as if hiding a habit within her. That night, Mother was restless, tossing in bed, gesturing. I asked what she wanted. She pointed left toward the drawer or chest. I opened the drawer, found medicines, old papers, and a small wooden box. She nodded and asked me to open it, her eyes begging me. Inside was an old ring, a simple men's ring with a paper saying, "If anything happens, return this." Tears filled Mother's eyes. I asked who to return it to, but she only moved her lips, no sound. The next day, Kailash came, looking troubled and angry. I asked where he'd been. He snapped sharply that he was where he should be and that I didn't need to know everything. I said I had the right to know everything about this house. He yelled, "What right do you have?" I couldn't bear his attitude and left, but his words pierced my heart like arrows. That evening, I saw Buaji sitting in the courtyard, weary. I asked if she really knew nothing and was hiding something despite knowing. She looked at me, then averted her eyes, saying some burdens don't leave with words but with time. That night, I slept beside Mother. At midnight, I woke to see her trying to sit up. I helped her. She weakly pointed toward the door. I asked if someone was coming. Hope and old wetness gleamed in her eyes. I opened the door. Silence reigned, only the wind moved. The next morning, Mother was unconscious. Called the doctor. Buaji sat near her, stroking her hand. Kailash came without a word, stood by the door, then left. The doctor said she was suffering a mental shock and her body was failing, holding back what she wanted to say deep in her heart. One word echoed in my mind. Mother had said if the promise broke, everything would break. Now that moment seemed very near. I had been awake for many nights, but that night was different. Sleep was in my eyes but unrest in my heart. Looking out the window, I saw Kailash sitting by the fire pit with a stranger whose back was toward me. They spoke softly. Kailash held the old yellow envelope seen many times near Mother's bed. My breath caught. I leaned in to listen, but their voices were too low. The stranger took the envelope and jumped over the courtyard wall, leaving. Kailash stood for a moment, then looked up at the sky as if deciding something and went inside. I spent the whole night by Mother's bed. Her breaths were very slow, like a lamp about to go out. Her eyes were closed. Her face had turned pale and her lips were dry. I pressed her hand many times, but there was no movement left in her body. In the morning, Buaji came to my room with seriousness on her face. She said, "Daughter, we have to take your mother to the hospital." I said, "I will come too." She replied, "No, daughter, you stay home. Will be too crowded there. We will manage." I shook my head in refusal. I couldn't leave my mother alone in this condition. Just then Kailash came in. He gave me a harsh look and said, "What will you do there? You will only be a hindrance. Rest here at home. We will handle everything." I looked at my mother. She was trying to say something but her tongue wouldn't cooperate. Tears were in her eyes as if she also wanted to tell me something. I went close to her, putting my ear near her lips, but only heard the sound of her breaths. Buaji had covered her with a sheet, and Kailash stepped forward to support her. A rickshaw was waiting at the gate, and they both took mother away. I stood near the door just watching them leave. The door shut, and silence engulfed the house as if even the walls were mourning. I stayed near the door till afternoon, but no news came. I tried calling many times, but Kailash's number was unreachable. Buaji's phone was also not picking up. Something was wrong. My heart pounded. I went to mother's room and looked in every corner. The bedsheet still smelled of her. Under the pillow I found another envelope, new, with only one paper inside that read, "The time is near now. The promise has been broken." Those words struck my heart. Who broke the promise? Kailash, Buaji, or the stranger? I searched every room in the house. When I entered Kailash's room, a shocking jolt hit me. His cupboard held many more envelopes with different dates. Some said delivered, others returned, and one said final task. I opened one envelope. Inside were money and a receipt from a medicine company. Another envelope had a doctor's prescription with mother's name. It seemed mother's treatment was happening differently, and we were all in the dark. Just then the phone rang. It was Buaji. She said mother had been shifted to the ICU. The doctor said the condition was serious and told me to pray. I asked if I could come there. She said no, the doctor had restricted visitors. There was panic in her voice, maybe anxiety. I only said I wanted to talk to mother once. She replied it wasn't possible. Mother was unconscious. Then the call ended, and I was left alone again in this incomplete, sad house. A thought echoed in my heart as if everything was already decided. That night I decided to watch the door for anyone coming. I sat in the courtyard staring at the door. Nothing happened till midnight. Then suddenly, a shadow peeked from outside the gate. I quickly opened the door. No one was there. I went to the street. It was silent everywhere. When I returned, an envelope lay on the courtyard chair. Nothing was written on it, only inside was a photo of mother, and behind it was written, "If you want to know, be ready. The shadow of truth is very long." My hands trembled. At that moment, I realized I was not only alone but also in danger. The house really felt empty. Mother's presence was not just the absence of a member. The walls, the door, the kitchen smell, even the airflow, everything had vanished. I decided to lie on her bed, hoping her scent would comfort me, and I would believe she would come back. The pillow still smelled of her hair. When I closed my eyes, it felt like she was lying right beside me, about to turn and say, "Get up, Shobita, don't you have school?" But nothing happened. Silence suffocated every breath. Sleep was far from my eyes, and my mind was trapped in a maze of questions. Suddenly, I felt something hard under the bed. I put my hand down and felt wood-like material. My heartbeat quickened. I moved the bed and saw an old wooden plank, probably part of the floor, but slightly shaking. I quickly grabbed an old knife-like weapon and carefully pried it open. As the plank lifted, a pot-like object appeared beneath. It was dark, but I reached inside and pulled out an old wooden chest. My fingers gripped the chest's edges. It felt like I wasn't just opening it but uncovering a truth buried for years. When I removed the lid, inside was the same old rusty wooden chest with neatly kept bundles of crisp notes, photos, an envelope, and some old documents. Opening the envelope, I saw a page written in Mother's handwriting saying, "If you are reading this, it means I have been taken away by deceit. These are the same people you trusted. Your Bua knows everything, and Kailash is part of the conspiracy. I hid much just to protect you, daughter, but now the time has come for you to face the truth." I was stunned. My eyes fixed on the envelope, but my mind sharpened. All past moments connected. The softness of Buaji, her son's silence, the envelopes, the shadow, and the stranger, all formed a clear picture. I took out a photo. Mother was in a hospital room, and Kailash stood nearby. His face showed no worry, just a strange calm. Another photo showed Rahul with Buaji. As I understood all this, a noise came from the door. soft footsteps as if someone was deliberately walking quietly. My heart pounded wildly. I quickly packed everything, closed the chest, and put the plank back. Just as I dashed toward the cupboard, the door suddenly flung open. I stepped back and tried to run, but someone forcefully covered my mouth with a cloth. A sharp smell hit me, and the next day I woke up in silence, locked in a small filthy room. The walls were damp, a small bulb hung, and footsteps were outside the door. The door slowly opened, and Kailash entered, hatred written all over his face. He said, "You found out everything. You saw what you shouldn't have." I asked weakly but bravely, "Why did you do all this?" He said, "Because this was not your house but ours. This property, this name, all belonged to my father. Your father took everything from his own sister's husband and made it his own. Now it's time to take it all back from you." I asked, "What fault did my mother have? You betrayed her." He said, "My mother endured everything to protect you, but you found out. Now you will stay silent forever." I tried to free myself, but my hands were tied behind my back. Kailash closed the door and went outside. In the silence of the room, my breaths echoed. I leaned against the wall and began to think about how long I would be imprisoned. What was happening outside? Where was Uncle Rahul? Was he still alive? I lost track of time. Only days and nights passed, distinguished by the bulb's light. After 2 days, when the door opened again, Kailash placed food and said no one would come looking for me here. Everyone would assume I had run away, and if anyone came, they would speak against me. I said how low he had fallen, betraying my mother and himself. He looked at me angrily and said he only took what was his. That night I rubbed my hands against the wall to loosen the rope. My hands got injured, but my courage remained. The next morning I loosened one side of the rope. Gathering strength near the door, when Kailash came next time to bring food, I pushed his hand hard. He lost balance and I ran out the door. But I couldn't get outside. Auntie caught me and said I had warned not to ask questions because questions lead women to revenge. I said she should be ashamed. She was my father's sister. I screamed, and she angrily said love gave nothing. Now it was time to claim inheritance, and I was an obstacle. Whatever was here belonged to her too. At that moment I realized it wasn't only Kailash but also Auntie who hated me. It was a woman's long-standing jealousy turned into a conspiracy. Looking at myself in the mirror, I was wounded and weak but had fire in my eyes. I knew this battle wasn't over. Everything I promised my mother, father, and myself was still pending. When I woke, the stench blocked my breath first. Dirt covered the broken wall, and water dripped from the ceiling. I was locked in a small room with damp walls and a swinging bulb. My body was stiff. Maybe many days had passed. Light came only through a hole, giving no clue of day or night. Kailash's voice echoed behind the door, mocking me for demanding property and daring to question as a girl. I was silent, unable to answer or scream. My eyes spoke everything but my voice was trapped. Time lost meaning. Only silence, hunger, and loneliness remained. When food came, it was just a piece of dry bread and cold water. Sitting against the wall, I kept thinking of my mother's face, father's letter, the chest, and the photos swirling in my mind. Sometimes I heard silence and the door would shake but never open. One night sitting by the door, I thought if I survived, I would take back everything. After a few days, Kailash came, opened the door, looked into my eyes and said, "Your game is over. No one is left for you. Your mother is dead, and so is your name. If you want, you can leave." Shocked, I asked what. He said, "Yes, go and see who recognizes you now, who will open the door for you." He gave me a torn old sheet and left me outside the door. I wrapped the sheet around me and staggered out weakly, my heart empty. People stared as if I belonged to another world. Reaching the village, I went straight home and knocked. Auntie came out, froze for a moment on seeing me, then said, "What do you want here? If you had left, you should have gone far." I said, "I want to see my mother." She said, "Your mother is dead because of you, and now you don't belong here. Go away." The door slammed shut. Auntie and her son now owned the house. I stood in the street. Some women chatting nearby said, "Isn't this the girl who ran away? What respect is left for her?" Hearing that, my heart pounded. My tongue was tied, but inside a storm raged. I was a stranger in my own village. Those before whom I played as a child now avoided my gaze. I couldn't meet my mother before the end, so I went to the old ruins and sat. Night fell, clouds covered the sky, humidity filled the air, and I felt emptiness inside. For the first time I cried silently. Then I heard footsteps, the same stranger who had given me the envelope before. My voice trembled as I said, "You." He handed me an envelope. Asked what it was. He said it was my father's last message, entrusted to him to give me when everything was taken from me. With trembling hands, I opened the envelope to find a letter. My father's last letter. "Shobita, daughter, if you are reading this, know you have lost everything but found the truth. You are my rightful heir to property and honor. If your mother hid the truth, it was to protect you. Your uncle Rahul and his son Kailash tried to break our family, but now everything is yours. The will, land documents, everything is with this stranger who is my ally. Now step forward and reclaim what is yours." I hugged the letter as tears fell, but now they were not of weakness, only the truth of a vow. "What next?" I asked the stranger. I said, "Tomorrow morning you will come with me to the city. The lawyer will see everything. You have proof, the will, and most importantly courage." I looked up to the sky as if wanting my mother to hear. Your silent patience will now become my battle cry. And at that moment, I felt this was perhaps my first true night. With Akash uncle, I reached the city where he stopped before an old office with a board reading Advocate Vikas Gupta, Property and Female Rights. Inside, a silent hall greeted us. A girl sitting there said, "Please wait, sir will be here soon." After a while, a middle-aged man came out. Akash uncle greeted and introduced me as Shobita, daughter of Ranjit. The lawyer said seriously, "You mean the case of Ranjit whose property dispute is ongoing after his death?" He said yes, and today he was with the real heir. I silently handed the envelope. The lawyer carefully read the will, land papers, photos, and finally the letter exposing the atrocities against my mother and Kailash's conspiracy. He said this was a very strong case. If all true, we could summon them directly to court. For the first time, I said firmly, I don't want just my property, but my mother's honor and her name. I wanted the truth and accountability for all the silent eyes that had made me a spectacle in the village. The lawyer nodded and said he would fight this case thoroughly. Then we reached the court and submitted all the documents. Akash uncle also testified that he had delivered the same envelope to our house and that everything was done on my father's instructions. He said he never asked anything, only knew that everything he was doing was for a daughter who was rightful. I looked at Akash uncle. There was loyalty and also shame in his eyes. I said, "Uncle, you saved me. Just don't ever leave my side now." The next day the court proceedings began. Notices were sent to Kailash and Auntie. The lawyer said everything in court would be within the legal framework, no matter how long it took. I decided not to go to the village and stayed in a cheap hotel in the city. Every morning I visited the lawyer's house and managed all the documents in the evening. Every day was like a battle, but I knew this silence would not continue anymore. After a week, the court hearings started. Kailash and Auntie both did not appear. Their lawyer requested to postpone the date, but the judge said the case couldn't be delayed further. They had evidence against them, and their presence was mandatory on the next date. Before going on the next date, I folded my hands in prayer before my mother's picture and said, "Mother, your silence will not be suppressed. I am ready to expose them." A few days later, Auntie and Kailash appeared in court. Kailash did not look at me, and Auntie's eyes held no love, even the false kind that once existed. The judge asked me to give my statement. Standing in court, I revealed the entire truth, from the envelope to captivity, the letter to the will. The courtroom was silent except for my voice and words breaking years of silence. Kailash tried to speak once, but the lawyer stopped him. Auntie testified in court that they didn't know my father had changed the will. They thought everything was under Kailash's name since he had no son and had considered their son as his own since childhood. But after their daughter was born, he started loving his daughter more. When asked if they had considered Shobita a rightful heir, Auntie remained silent. The judge ruled that Mamta and Kailash were guilty of forcibly kidnapping Shobita and hiding the will through deceit, and decided to give them the strictest punishment. They were also held responsible for my mother's death and punished accordingly. Auntie came to me, folded her hands, and begged for forgiveness and protection. I said now it's not me but the law that punishes you, as you deserve. Kailash's eyes still held arrogance as always, but now they had to face jail. I was happy to have received justice. I had won. After the verdict, a strange peace filled my heart. Both were taken into custody. When I returned home, I stood before my mother's picture and said, "Mother, the war you silently fought your whole life has now been won. It's all over." The rule ended, and days of peace began. Now I live in my home on my own terms. Akash uncle still cares for me and arranged my marriage with his son. Friends, I hope you liked our story. If you did, please like the video. If you're new to the channel, subscribe and don't forget to hit the notification bell so you get the latest updates first.